The Backward Mile. The legend of Hemlock Lane wasn't exactly front-page news. It was the kind of story whispered between teenagers daring each other after too many cheap beers, or muttered by the town's older eccentrics, the ones who collected string and talked to pigeons. Liam had heard it years ago, dismissed it as folklore, the kind of spooky tale every town seemed to cultivate like a stubborn patch of weeds. But grief did strange things to a person. It hollowed you out, leaving echoing spaces where logic used to reside. And sometimes, just sometimes, it made the most outlandish whispers sound like a desperate kind of hope. The legend was simple, almost childishly so. Walk the entire length of Hemlock Lane, exactly 1 mile from the rusted railway bridge to the old cemetery gates, backwards, between the hours of 3 o'clock a.m. and 4 o'clock a.m. on a moonless night. Do this and you could glimpse something lost. See a face, hear a voice, maybe even feel a touch from beyond the veil. Most versions warned against it, hinting that what you saw might not be what you expected, or that something else might see you. Liam didn't care about the warnings. It had been 6 months since Sarah died, 6 months of suffocating silence in their shared apartment, 6 months of her scent fading from the pillows, 6 months of waking up reaching for a warmth that wasn't there. He tried therapy, support groups, drowning himself in work. Nothing filled the void. The grief was a physical entity, a cold, heavy thing sitting on his chest day and night. He was desperate, not for hope, but for anything. A flicker, a sign, even a terrifying one, would be better than this crushing emptiness. Hemlock Lane itself seemed designed for such a legend. It was one of the oldest streets in Oak Haven, narrow and poorly lit, flanked by tall, skeletal trees whose branches intertwined overhead, creating a perpetual twilight even during the day. At night, it was a tunnel of blackness, punctuated by the weak, orange glow of infrequent streetlights, many of them cracked or flickering. Houses, mostly Victorian relics in various states of disrepair, sat back from the road, their windows like vacant eyes. It smelled of damp earth, decaying leaves, and something else, a faint, metallic tang that Liam couldn't quite place. He checked his watch, 2:58 a.m. The night was perfect, starless, moonless, the air still and heavy. He'd parked his car several blocks away, walking the final stretch to the railway bridge with a knot tightening in his stomach. Standing under the graffitied concrete arch, the air felt colder. He took a deep breath, the metallic tang stronger here, almost like old blood. He turned around, his back to the mile-long stretch of darkness leading to the cemetery. 3 o'clock a.m. Liam took his first step backward. It felt immediately unnatural. His body protested, muscles straining against the unfamiliar motion. He had to constantly crane his neck, looking over his shoulder to stay on the cracked pavement, avoiding potholes and uneven curbs. The silence was profound, broken only by the scuff of his own shoes on the asphalt. It was a sound that seemed amplified, too loud in the oppressive quiet. He passed the first streetlight, its bulb long dead. The darkness deepened. He focused on Sarah's face, holding her image in his mind like a talisman. Her smile, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners, the auburn glint in her hair under sunlight. "See me, Sarah. Let me see you." As he moved backward past the second streetlight, this one flickering erratically, casting dancing, distorted shadows, he heard the first anomaly. A dog barked, sharp and sudden, somewhere off in the distance behind him, which was, directionally, ahead of him. But the sound was wrong. It wasn't a bark, but a crab. Like the sound played in reverse. He stumbled, catching himself on unsteady legs. He glanced over his shoulder. Nothing. Just the empty street stretching into blackness. He kept walking, backward. The strain in his neck and calves was becoming a dull ache. He tried to ignore the reversed bark, telling himself it was nerves, the wind, anything but what the legend implied. He passed a dilapidated house with boarded-up windows. As he drew level with it, walking backward, he heard a faint sound from within. Music? No, more like laughter. High-pitched, giggling laughter, but like the bark, it felt inverted, unsettlingly alien. Retail. It seemed to scrape against the inside of his skull. He quickened his pace, stumbling again. Looking over his shoulder, the house remained dark and silent. The air grew colder. He could see his breath misting, though it wasn't that cold a night. The metallic tang intensified, now thick in his throat, tasting like sucking on an old penny. He was perhaps a third of the way down the lane. The silence returned, heavier this time, pressing in on him. Then came the whispers. They weren't reversed. They slithered around the edges of his hearing, seeming to come from the rustling leaves overhead, from the cracks in the pavement, from the very air itself. Indistinct at first, then coalescing into fragments. Lost, looking, backward is the wrong way, she's not here. Liam's heart hammered against his ribs. He wanted to stop, to turn around and run back the way he came, back to the relative sanity of the railway bridge. But the thought of Sarah, the desperate, irrational hope of seeing her, pushed him onward, backward. He forced himself to focus, blocking out the whispers. Sarah, think of Sarah. He pictured their last vacation, walking hand in hand on a beach, the sun warm on their skin. A sudden, sharp crack echoed from directly behind him, ahead of him. He spun around, faster than he meant to, losing his balance and falling hard onto his hands and knees. The asphalt scraped his palms raw. He looked wildly down the lane toward the cemetery gates, still shrouded in darkness. Nothing. He looked back toward the bridge. Nothing. Just the empty, silent street. He pushed himself up, his hands stinging. He was trembling now, not just from the cold. The whispers had stopped. The silence felt watchful. He took a hesitant step backward, then another. He passed under another flickering streetlight. In the strobing orange light, he saw something on the pavement just ahead of his backward path. A shape. Small, dark, he squinted, craning his neck. It looked like a bird. A dead bird lying on its back, wings crumpled. As he walked backward past it, keeping his eyes fixed on it over his shoulder, its wings twitched. Then, impossibly, it began to move, not flying, but dragging itself across the asphalt backward. Its head lolled, beak scraping the ground. Park, park, park. Liam choked back a cry. He forced himself to look away, to keep moving. It's not real, grief, stress, lack of sleep. The rationalizations felt thin, brittle. He was nearing the halfway point. The trees here were thicker, older, their branches forming a near-solid canopy. The darkness was almost absolute. He could barely see the edges of the road. He relied on the feel of the curb beneath the edge of his shoe, shuffling backward more slowly now. The metallic smell was overpowering. He felt dizzy, nauseous, and then he felt it. A change in the air pressure, a sudden, intense cold spot that enveloped him. It felt like stepping into a walk-in freezer. Goosebumps erupted all over his body, and he heard her voice. Liam. It wasn't reversed. It was Sarah's voice, clear as day, filled with confusion and a hint of fear. It came from directly in front of him, the direction he was facing, back toward the bridge. He froze, every muscle locked. Tears sprang to his eyes. Sarah, he whispered, his voice cracking. Liam, where are you? It's dark. Her voice sounded closer now. He wanted to turn around, to run toward the sound of her voice. But the legend backward. You had to keep going backward. I'm here, Sarah. I'm on Hemlock Lane. Silence, then a soft, wet shuffling sound from the darkness ahead of him, behind his direction of travel. Toward the cemetery. Don't listen, Liam. Sarah's voice again from behind him ahead, urgent now. It's not me. Turn around, go back. Confusion warred with desperation. Two voices. He strained his ears. The shuffling sound grew louder, closer. A thick, dragging sound, accompanied by a low, guttural breathing. Liam, please, Sarah's voice pleaded, seemingly just feet away from his face. It's a trap, go back. But the shuffling, it was almost upon him from the other direction. He risked a glance over his shoulder. In the oppressive darkness, he saw movement. A shape, low to the ground, indistinct at first. It seemed to be crawling, dragging itself along the pavement. As it entered the feeble, outer edge of the nearest flickering streetlight's glow, Liam's breath hitched. It wasn't human. It was long, segmented, like a grotesque centipede made of shadow and something slick and dark. It had too many limbs, scrabbling, clicking on the asphalt, and at its front a face. Or rather, a mockery of one, pale, distorted, with empty sockets and a rictus grin filled with needle-sharp teeth. It wasn't Sarah. It was nothing he had ever seen or could have imagined. "Found you," a voice hissed, dry and rasping, seeming to come from the creature's grinning mouth, though the mouth didn't move. Looking backward sees what follows. Panic, cold and absolute, seized Liam. He forgot Sarah's pleading voice behind him. He forgot the legend. He spun around, intending to sprint toward the cemetery gates, away from the crawling horror. As he turned, he ran face first into something solid yet yielding. He stumbled back, crying out. Standing directly in front of him, where Sarah's voice had been, was another figure. Tall and gaunt, draped in what looked like decaying black fabric. It had no discernible features, just a smooth, pale oval where a face should be. It radiated an unnatural cold. "Wrong way," it whispered, the sound seeming to emanate from the air around it rather than any mouth. Liam was trapped. The crawling thing behind him, this blank figure in front. Hemlock Lane felt like it was shrinking, the darkness pressing in, suffocating him. The crawling horror was closer now, its clicking louder, the metallic smell emanating from it in waves. The blank figure raised a long, skeletal hand, pointing back the way Liam had come, toward the railway bridge. "Must finish," the blank figure whispered. "Backward." Liam looked wildly between the two entities. The crawling thing let out a wet, gurgling chuckle. Its grin seemed to widen. Sarah's voice echoed again, faint now, desperate. "Liam, run." He didn't know which way to run. He didn't know what was real. Was the blank figure trying to help him, enforcing the rules of the ritual? Was the crawling thing the price? Was Sarah's voice real or another lure? He made a split-second decision. The crawling thing felt viscerally, immediately dangerous. The blank figure, while terrifying, seemed directive. He had to finish. Backward. He squeezed his eyes shut for a second, took a ragged breath, and turned his back on the blank figure, facing the crawling horror once more. He started walking backward again, faster now, stumbling, nearly falling. The crawling thing matched his pace, staying just behind him, its rasping breath hot on his neck, the clicking of its limbs a maddening rhythm. He could feel its presence, a palpable wave of malice and hunger. Almost there, it hissed. Almost saw her, almost gave her to me. Gave her to it, what did that mean? Was seeing Sarah the bait? He risked another glance over his shoulder. The blank figure was gone. He looked forward, backward. The cemetery gates were visible now, wrought iron specters against the slightly less dense darkness beyond the lane. Maybe 50 yards left. The crawling thing lunged. Liam felt sharp claws scrabble at his back, tearing through his jacket and shirt, scoring shallow lines on his skin. He cried out, stumbling backward faster, adrenaline surging through him. He could hear it scrambling right behind him, its guttural breathing turning into eager, hungry gasps. The whispers started again, swirling around him, louder now, more insistent. Foolish, price must be paid. Looked back, looked forward, broken the path. He ignored them, cemetery gates, just reached the gates. Backward, he bumped hard against something. The cold iron of the gates, he'd made it. He fumbled behind him, pushing one of the heavy gates open just enough to slip through, still facing the lane, still moving backward. He stumbled onto the damp grass of the cemetery, falling onto his back. He scrambled away, crab-walking backward until his back hit a cold, moss-covered headstone. He stared, panting, at the entrance to Hemlock Lane. The crawling horror was right there, pressed against the iron bars of the gate, its featureless face contorted in fury, needle-teeth gnashing. It reached its segmented limbs through the bars, claws clicking against the iron, unable to reach him. It let out a frustrated, unearthly shriek that echoed through the silent graveyard. The blank figure materialized beside it, outside the gate, still facing Liam. It tilted its featureless head. "The path is complete," it whispered, the sound carrying clearly across the distance. "But broken. A glimpse was earned. A price is owed." Liam stared, trembling, confused. "A glimpse? I didn't see her." The blank figure slowly raised its hand, pointing not at Liam, but at the crawling horror thrashing against the gates. And Liam saw it. Reflected in the slick, dark carapace of the creature, distorted but unmistakable, was an image. Sarah, not smiling, not as he remembered her from the beach. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with terror, her mouth open in a silent scream. And behind her, in the reflection, loomed a vast, consuming darkness. It wasn't a memory. It wasn't a comforting vision. It was a glimpse of her fear, her final moments, or perhaps her current state. The crawling horror shrieked again, and the reflection vanished. "The price," the blank figure whispered, turning its smooth face back to Liam. "You looked back, you looked forward, you broke the path's integrity. It remains attached." Liam didn't understand. Attached. He looked down at himself. Nothing. He looked back at the creature. It was still thrashing, but its movements seemed weaker. Some of the slick darkness seemed to be flaking off it, dissipating like smoke. Then he felt it. A cold spot forming on his back where the creature had scratched him. Not the stinging of the cuts, but a deep, penetrating cold, like the cold spot he'd felt on the lane. It began to spread, radiating through his body. He looked at the blank figure, horrified. "What did you do?" "The backward path shows what follows," it whispered. "You brought something back with you, not her. Something that clings." The crawling horror let out one final, gurgling sigh and seemed to deflate, collapsing into a pile of dust and shadow that quickly dispersed in the pre-dawn gloom. The gate stood empty. The blank figure remained. "It will feed on the echoes," it stated, its voice devoid of emotion. "On the grief you carry. It will grow stronger in your shadow. You walked the mile. Now it walks with you." With a final, chilling whisper that sounded like dry leaves skittering across pavement, the blank figure dissolved into the darkness of Hemlock Lane, leaving Liam alone in the silent cemetery, the cold spreading through his veins. He scrambled to his feet, his body aching, his mind reeling. He touched his back. The scratches were there, but the cold felt deeper, burrowing into his soul. He looked back down the lane. It looked ordinary now, just a dark, tree-lined street. But he knew it wasn't. He stumbled out of the cemetery, not daring to look back, the metallic taste still coating his tongue. The first hints of dawn were painting the sky a bruised purple. He reached his car, his hands shaking so badly he could barely get the key in the ignition. Driving home, he kept glancing in the rearview mirror, expecting to see the crawling thing in the back seat or the blank figure standing on the roadside. He saw nothing but the empty streets, but he felt it. The cold spot on his back was a permanent fixture now, a chilling reminder. And sometimes, out of the corner of his eye, he thought he saw movement in his own shadow. A flicker, a distortion, something long and segmented trying to take shape. He hadn't found Sarah on Hemlock Lane. He hadn't found peace. He had walked the backward mile, seeking a connection to the past, and instead he had tethered himself to a horror that would follow him, feeding on his sorrow, forever walking just behind him, in the darkness he now carried within. The emptiness wasn't gone. It had just been filled with something far, far worse. Story 2, The Detritus Drifter. The city exhaled waste. Anya knew this intimately. As a night shift cleaner for a downtown office complex, her commute home involved traversing the city's shadowed arteries long after the respectable world had tucked itself in. She walked the back alleys, the service lanes, the grimy capillaries where the city's refuse gathered like clots. Dumpsters overflowed with the detritus of daytime commerce. Plastic bags snagged on chain-link fences like captured ghosts, and the air hung thick with the smell of stale grease, damp cardboard, and decay. She usually kept her head down, earbuds in, music loud enough to drown out the skittering rats and the occasional unsettling shout from a distant street. Tonight, however, was different. One earbud had died, leaving her right ear exposed to the nocturnal symphony of the city's underbelly. And tonight, the symphony had a new, discordant note. It started subtly, a rustling sound from a particularly large dumpster near the loading dock of a closed restaurant. Not the usual frantic scrabbling of rats or the clumsy foraging of a stray cat. This was slower, heavier, almost deliberate. Anya quickened her pace, pulling her thin jacket tighter. Probably just a raccoon, she told herself, a big one. A block later, cutting through a narrow passage between two brick buildings, she saw it. Or rather, she saw something. A pile of garbage, plastic sheeting, tangled wires, sodden newspapers. A broken mannequin arm sticking out at an odd angle seemed larger than she remembered it being a moment ago. And was it just her tired eyes, or did it seem to subtly shift, to rearrange itself as she passed? She dismissed it as a trick of the flickering security light overhead. Exhaustion played tricks, but the feeling of being watched prickled the back of her neck, unsettling. She risked a glance back. The pile of trash looked inert, exactly as it should. Still, she hurried her steps, emerging onto a slightly wider, though equally deserted, service road. The sound came again. That slow, dragging rustle, closer this time. It seemed to be coming from the mouth of the alley she'd just exited. She stopped, straining her ears. A scraping sound, like heavy plastic dragged over concrete. A soft, wet thump. Her heart began to beat faster. This wasn't an animal. It didn't sound like a person either. She fumbled in her pocket for her phone, fingers clumsy with sudden fear. She needed light. She aimed the phone's flashlight back toward the alley mouth. The beam cut through the oppressive darkness, illuminating swirling dust motes. And then it landed on the source of the sound. Anya gasped, stumbling back a step. It was the pile of trash, or rather, it had been. Now it was standing, roughly humanoid in shape, but hideously wrong. It was a shambling effigy of urban waste, 6 feet tall, maybe more. Plastic bags formed a shifting torso, strips of discarded tarp hung like tattered skin. Rusted metal scraps, bent license plates, jagged pieces of ductwork jutted out like broken bones. Tangled wires and cables snaked through it like veins, pulsing with a faint, internal light, like static electricity. The broken mannequin arm she'd seen earlier was now one of its limbs, twitching unnaturally. Its other arm was a composite of crushed cans and splintered wood. And its head, dear God, its head. A cracked plastic bucket sat atop the shifting mass, 2 jagged holes torn into it resembling eyes. Deep within those holes, something glinted not light, but an utter absorption of it, voids that seemed to drink the beam from her phone. A length of filthy, grease-stained fabric hung from the bucket's rim like a lolling tongue. It took a step toward her, a grotesque, lurching movement accompanied by the scraping, rustling symphony of its own composition. It didn't seem hostile, not yet, just observant, curious perhaps, but its very existence was an abomination, a violation of natural order. Anya couldn't scream. Her throat was tight with terror. She backed away slowly, her phone held out like a ward. The creature, the Detritus Drifter, a name that sprang unbidden into her mind, mirrored her movement, taking another slow, dragging step forward. It seemed to absorb loose debris from the ground as it moved, incorporating a crumpled newspaper, a discarded bottle cap into its shifting form. It was growing, feeding on the filth. She turned and ran. Her footsteps echoed frantically on the pavement. She didn't dare look back, but she could hear it following. The scraping, the rustling, the occasional clank of metal on concrete. It wasn't fast, but it was relentless. She burst out of the service road onto a wider, dimly lit street. Empty. No cars, no people, just rows of dark storefronts and the hum of streetlights. She sprinted down the sidewalk, gasping for breath, praying for a passing car, a police patrol, anything. She risked a glance over her shoulder. It was there, lumbering out of the service road, its silhouette stark and monstrous against the faint glow from the alley. It seemed larger now, more defined. The plastic bucket head tilted, the dark voids fixing on her. Panic lent her speed. She ducked into another alley, narrower this time, hoping to lose it in the maze. This one was a dead end, terminating in a high chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. Trapped, she spun around, pressing her back against the cold metal fence, phone light trembling violently in her hand. The Detritus Drifter filled the alley entrance, blocking her escape. It stopped about 20 feet away, its bucket head tilting again, emitting a low, grating sound, like stones grinding together. Why run? The voice was a composite, a chorus of whispers and static, like a radio tuned between stations, overlaid with the sound of crinkling plastic and grinding metal. It wasn't coming from the bucket, but from the entire mass of the creature. Anya could only shake her head, speechless with terror. "We are the forgotten," the composite voice rasped. "The discarded. You walk among us every night." It took another step closer. Anya could smell it now, the concentrated stench of rot, mildew, stale chemicals, and something else, something metallic and vaguely electrical. "You see us. Others do not. Why fear? You're not real," Anya finally choked out, the words barely a whisper. The creature seemed to chuckle, a dry, rustling sound. Real enough, born of waste. Fed by neglect. Shaped by indifference. It raised its mannequin arm, pointing a chipped plastic finger toward her. "You are like us, alone, working in shadows, cleaning up messes, ignored." Anya flinched. Was it reading her thoughts, or just observing the patterns of her lonely life? The fear began to mix with a strange, unsettling sense of connection she desperately wanted to reject. "I'm not like you," she shouted, finding her voice, fueled by defiance. "I'm human." The creature tilted its head again. Human waste too, thoughts discarded, dreams thrown away. Loneliness festers like mold. It took another lurching step, 10 feet away now. Anya could see individual pieces of trash shifting within its form. A child's broken toy, a stained fast food wrapper, a single, mud-caked boot. It was a walking monument to everything the city tried to hide. "Join us," the voice rasped, softer now, almost persuasive. "Become part of the whole. Find purpose in the refuse." The mannequin hand twitched closer, its plastic fingers disturbingly lifelike despite the grime and cracks. Anya recoiled, pressing herself harder against the unyielding chain-link fence. The cold metal bit into her back. "Get away from me," she screamed, the sound raw and desperate in the narrow confines of the alley. "You're just garbage." The word hung in the air. The creature paused. The faint, internal static light within its form seemed to flicker like a failing bulb. The grinding sound intensified, rising in pitch, becoming almost a whine of rusted metal. "Garbage," the composite voice echoed, the playful or persuasive tone gone, replaced by something colder, sharper. "Yes, like you will be. Like all things become, we are the inevitable. The final form." It lunged, not fast, but with a sudden, decisive movement that belied its shambling nature. Its composite arm, the one made of cans and wood, shot out, aiming not to grab, but to pin her against the fence. Anya cried out, twisting sideways. Splintered wood scraped against the brick wall beside her head as the arm slammed into the chain link, making the fence rattle violently. She saw her chance. While the creature was momentarily off balance, its arm wedged slightly in the fence links, she bolted sideways. She scrabbled at the fence, trying to find purchase for her feet, intending to climb. The mesh was slick with city grime. No escape the cycle, the drifter rasped. Its mannequin arm swung around faster than she expected. The plastic hand clamped down hard on her ankle. Anya screamed, kicking frantically with her free leg. Her foot connected with the creature's torso, a disconcerting squelch followed by the clatter of something metallic dislodging and falling to the ground. The creature didn't even flinch. Its grip tightened, cold plastic digging into her skin through her thin pants. It began to pull her down, its strength surprising. She clung to the fence, her fingers aching, knuckles white. She looked down into the shifting mass of its body, the glinting voids in its bucket head seeming to fix on her with predatory focus. "Become part," it grated. "Give your waste to us. Your fear, your loneliness. We consume. We grow." She could feel a strange pulling sensation, not just physical, but almost psychic. As if it was trying to draw out her anxieties, her weariness, the accumulated grime of her own life. Panic surged, pure and primal. She wasn't just fighting a monster made of trash, she was fighting becoming trash itself. Her keys. They were in her jacket pocket, attached to a small multi-tool her brother had given her, the kind with a tiny, flimsy knife blade. Her hand scrabbled desperately at her pocket. The creature pulled again, harder. Her grip on the fence slipped. Her fingers closed around the keys and the tool. With a surge of adrenaline, she yanked them free. She didn't have time to unfold the blade. She twisted, bringing the jagged edges of the keys down hard onto the mannequin hand gripping her ankle. She stabbed and sawed frantically. The plastic was old, brittle. A crack appeared. She stabbed again, putting all her weight behind it. The plastic groaned, then snapped. The thumb and forefinger of the mannequin hand broke off, still clamped around her ankle like a bizarre shackle. The creature let out a high-pitched shriek, a discordant blend of tearing plastic and electronic feedback. It recoiled, its arm retracting, leaving the broken fingers attached to Anya. It staggered back a step, its form flickering more violently. Pieces of debris rained down from its body, bottle caps, scraps of paper, clumps of unidentifiable filth. Anya didn't wait. She scrambled upward, ignoring the burning pain in her ankle where the broken plastic dug in. The top of the fence seemed miles away. The barbed wire glinted menacingly. She found footholds in the mesh, pulling herself up with raw strength born of terror. Below her, the Detritus Drifter raged. It slammed its remaining hand, the composite one, against the fence, shaking it violently. Rust flaked off, raining down on her. "Cannot discard us," it shrieked, the voice fragmenting. "We are forever. We are what remains." She reached the top, gasping, muscles screaming. The barbed wire snagged her jacket, tearing the fabric. She had to get over it. She threw one leg over, then the other, ignoring the sharp points that tore at her jeans and scratched her skin. For a moment, she teetered precariously, then half jumped, half fell onto the other side. She landed hard on asphalt, jarring her entire body. Pain shot up her leg from the ankle where the broken plastic fingers were still attached. She ignored it, scrambling to her feet and running, limping heavily. She didn't look back until she reached the end of the next alley, spilling out onto a slightly busier street. A few late-night taxis zipped past, their headlights momentarily blinding. Streetlights cast pools of sickly yellow light. It felt like re-entering reality, albeit a grimy, exhausted version of it. She leaned against a cold brick wall, chest heaving, trying to catch her breath. Her hands were scraped raw, her clothes torn, her ankle throbbed. She looked down. The broken mannequin fingers were still clamped there. With trembling hands, she pried them off, wincing as they pulled at her skin. She threw them violently away from her, watching them clatter into the gutter. She looked back toward the alley complex she'd escaped. Nothing, just darkness and the distant hum of the city. Had it been real, the torn clothes, the scratches, the throbbing ankle, the discarded plastic fingers, they were real enough. She started the long walk home, favoring her injured leg, flinching at every rustle from overflowing bins, every pile of discarded refuse. The city looked different now. The alleys weren't just passages, they were veins. The garbage wasn't just waste, it was potential. Potential for what she dreaded to think. The creature's words echoed in her mind, born of waste, fed by neglect, shaped by indifference. It was a monster, yes, but a monster the city itself had created, piece by piece, bag by bag, discarded dream by discarded dream. In its other words, you are like us, alone, ignored. Had it sensed her own feelings of being overlooked, her quiet life spent cleaning up other people's messes while feeling invisible? Was that why it had approached her? Was that the connection it felt? The thought was deeply disturbing, to be seen, finally, but only by a thing made of garbage. She finally reached her small apartment building just as the first hints of gray lightened the eastern sky. She fumbled with her keys, the same keys she'd used to fight back, and let herself into the quiet hallway. In the safety of her own small, clean apartment, she stripped off her torn clothes, dropping them straight into a trash bag. She cleaned her cuts and scrapes, bandaging her ankle. Looking in the bathroom mirror, she saw the exhaustion etched onto her face, but also a new kind of fear in her eyes. A fear that wasn't just about monsters lurking in the dark, but about the darkness lurking in the mundane, in the things everyone ignored. She sealed the trash bag tightly, knotting it twice. She hesitated before taking it out to the communal bins behind the building. Every instinct screamed at her to keep it inside, to burn it, to destroy any link to the night's events. But that was ridiculous. It was just trash. Torn clothes, nothing more. She forced herself to take the bag outside. The morning air was cool, carrying the sounds of the city slowly waking up. She lifted the lid of the large plastic bin. It was nearly full, a typical collection of household waste. She tossed her bag in. As it landed, she heard it, faint but unmistakable. A soft, slow rustling from deep within the bin, like plastic sheeting shifting, like tangled wires settling. Anya froze, her blood running cold. She stared at the bin, half expecting the lid to lift, for a bucket head with void-like eyes to emerge. Nothing happened, just the silence of the early morning and the memory of that rustling sound. She backed away slowly, then turned and hurried back inside, locking her door securely behind her. From that night on, Anya's walk home was different. She avoided the back alleys, sticking to the main streets, even if it took longer. She bought new, high-quality earbuds and played her music loud. But she couldn't completely shut out the city. She started noticing the trash more. Not just noticing, but seeing it. The way plastic bags caught the wind, mimicking grasping hands. The way discarded furniture on the curb seemed to slump in despair. The way light glinted off broken glass like watchful eyes. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind rustled the bins outside her window, she thought she heard it, that slow, deliberate scraping, that chorus of whispers and static. We are the forgotten. She never saw the Detritus Drifter again, but she knew it was out there, growing, shifting, feeding on the city's indifference. And she couldn't shake the feeling that it hadn't given up on her. It had seen her, recognized something in her. And sooner or later, the cycle of waste catches up to everyone. She just prayed she wouldn't be there when her own discarded pieces were ready to be collected. The city exhaled waste, and Anya now knew, with chilling certainty, that sometimes the waste inhaled back.